actually saved that a little too early, so we've got this last little section. Let's just go ahead and catch it up. 123, it says towards the bottom, Javert felt as though he were on the point of losing his senses. Why? Because Madeleine comes in and he says, now remember, Fantine has been arrested, and she's just out of her mind. She's so panicky. If she goes to prison for 6 months, what will become of her child? They're already threatening to kick her out on the street. She's almost hysterical with fear, and the mayor comes in and says, let her at liberty. And then she spits in the mayor's face. Now, why does she do that? Right before he says that, because she considered it all his fault, that he was the one behind her being fired, and that he was really very cruel. At first she thought he was nice, but when all this happened, she thought, well, he's behind this, and he's very cruel. So she spits at him. Instead, Monsieur Madeleine says, set her free. And of course, for a black and white person, not only did she kind of go ballistic and lose it in all her emotion, but Javert goes ballistic, but he's internal, not external. He's very stoic on the outside, but he cannot believe it. He's flabbergasted. He stands for law and order. He doesn't stand for extenuating circumstances. He doesn't stand for let's look beyond the surface and seek to understand what has put her in this place, what has allowed these circumstances to happen. I would suggest exhibiting a more perfect justice, more reflective of God's. But that's not what he stands for. He stands for this black and white approach where he just says she either did something wrong, in which case she needs to be punished, or she was innocent and she shouldn't be punished. Okay. And he judges everybody, including himself, by this very impossible standard. Very impossible standard. If God judged us by such a standard, where would we be? But the gospel is represented in Muriel, not in Javert. Though many people falsely understand it and see that as God's view towards us, and it is not. God understands the human heart and sent his Son to set it new, to set it right, to fix it, to heal it, to help us on this growth in righteousness towards the throne of grace. Okay, now, so it goes on, and so he says, Javert felt as though, when he says, set her at liberty, Javert felt as though he were on the point of losing his senses. He experienced at that moment, blow on blow and almost simultaneously, the most violent emotions that he had known in his life. To see a woman of the town, that's an expression for a prostitute, spit in the face of a mayor was a thing so monstrous that in his most daring suppositions he would have thought it sacrilege to believe it possible. On the other hand, deep down in his thought, he dimly brought into hideous association what this woman was and what this mayor might be. And then he perceived with horror something indescribably simple in this prodigious assault. But when he saw this mayor, this magistrate, wipe his face quietly and say, set this woman at liberty, could you imagine what's going on in his life? It's like everything his whole paradigm is just turned on its head. He was stupefied with amazement. Thought and speech alike failed him. The sum of possible astonishment had been overpassed. He was speechless. Now going on to page 127. So his whole world during this event, Javert's world, is being turned on its head. This goes beyond all comprehension. We go on the bottom, page 126, and all of 127. Meanwhile, She also was the subject of a strange revolution. In other words, another upside down experience is going on in Fantine. She had seen herself somehow fought over by two opposing powers. She had seen struggling before her very eyes two men who held in their hands her liberty, her life, her soul, her child. One of these men was drawing her to the side of darkness. The other was leading her towards the light. In this contest, that's a theme that comes up quite a bit. Think back to Bienvenue and Javert, and Jean Valjean. Same idea of the struggle between light and darkness. People leading us towards one or the other. In this contest, seen with distortion through the magnifying power of fright, these two men had appeared to her like two giants. One spoke as her demon, the other as her good angel. The angel had vanquished the demon, and the thought of it made her shudder from head to foot. This angel, this deliverer, was precisely the man whom she had abhorred. This mayor, whom she had so long ago considered as the author of all her woes, this Madeleine. And at the very moment when she had insulted him in a hideous fashion, he had saved her. Is this starting to bring back another scene in the story? This is looking very much like Monsieur Muriel, or Bishop Muriel, as Jean Valjean is brought by his accusers before him. And he is saving him. Okay. Had she then been deceived? Ought she then to change her whole heart? She did not know. She trembled. She listened with dismay. She looked around with alarm at each word that Monsieur Madeleine uttered. She felt the fearful darkness of her hatred melt within and flow away. Does that sound like Jean Valjean as he's sitting and weeping in the dust in the middle of the street after not being able to find Petit Javert? While there was born in her heart an indescribable and unspeakable warmth of joy, of confidence, and of love. So this now is, this one event here is Javert's world turning upside down in shock, but no conversion, no repentance, just what in the world? How can I get my mind around this? And Fantine has her conversion, which you can compare and contrast with that of Jean Valjean earlier. They never use the word conversion. They never use overt spiritual language in this sense, in this paradigm. Okay. But this is what, in other words, would be called a conversion experience. Okay. All right, so I apologize that we're going to tack this on as part 3b, this last section here, to talk about the end from here down.